Right guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, today I'm in this 2003 BMW 530 diesel. This is the 5th generation 5 Series, known as the E60 or E61 for the estate. Sorry, touring. I've filmed with the E39, I've filmed with the F10, and I've also filmed with the G30. So when I bought this car yesterday, I thought, I've got to film with this. It's the only one in the modern 5 Series range that I haven't filmed with. Whenever I pick up a new car, to break up the monotony of my day, I try to work out who the previous owner was. And obviously I bought this from a local main dealer as a trade-in, so I never actually met the previous owner. So all I've got to go off is some clues that are left behind in the car. Detective Inspector Goodwin is on duty. Let's have a look then, shall we? For starters, this is an SE model rather than M Sport, so the suspension's much softer. From that snippet of information, I think it's fair to assume that the previous owner had a bad back, perhaps a slipped disc, and some mild arthritis. We've also got a dash cam, which means the previous owner was careful, cautious, considerate. This has a diesel engine, so I think we can safely say the previous owner was quite thrifty. Having said that, it's the 3-litre straight 6 turbo diesel, so it does have quite a bit of get up and go. So perhaps they were the sort of person that, I don't know, maybe had a Rover P6 back when Jack was a lad. What else? Oh, I found this old cushion in the back, for which I have no explanation. I don't wish to sound ageist, but let's just say I've never found one of those cushions in a Corsa SXi. Radio presets are the biggest clue whenever I play this little game. They tell you an awful lot about the previous owner. If you get in the car and find that it's tuned to Unity FM, I think it's fair to say that the brake fluid hasn't been changed on time. Whereas if it's set to Radio 4, then you can bet your bottom dollar that it has, and some. If you discover it's set to Radio 3, then you can pretty much guarantee there's a spreadsheet in the person's house with every single fill-up so they can work out their average MPG. Anyway, I'm quite impressed with this car. Every single thing works. Even the air conditioning's ice cold, which on a nice day like today is pretty important. All of the windows work, the electric mirrors work, even the engine light works. It stays on just to remind me that it works. It's quite a clever feature, that. Very intelligent engineering. Very good. This 5th generation 5 Series was released in 2003 and ran until 2010. And when it was launched, it wasn't very well received. That was mainly because the E39 was just so popular. It was a good looking car, the E39. It was tasteful and subtle and discreet, whereas this E60 was bold and brash. This of course came from the Chris Bangle era of BMW, where everything went bigger and bolder and a little bit uglier. That said, I never disliked the E60. I always thought it was quite a handsome car. Definitely more butch and macho than the E39, but I wouldn't call it an ugly car. I think BMW did alienate a good portion of the fan base with this car. I imagine quite a few of them jumped ship altogether and perhaps bought a Mercedes W211 E-Class. Bear in mind this car is now 18 years old. I still think it looks quite modern. Everything around it has got even bolder and even brasher, so the E60 I think has aged quite well. Apart from my headlamps, because they have developed some cataracts. Inside it's pretty good. You get a couple of cup holders which pop out of the dash, which are okay for cups, but they're no good for my keys or wallet or phone. The driving position's very good, visibility is excellent, you can have the seat nice and low if you so desire. The seats are also very comfortable, although because these are only the SE seats rather than the hugging M Sport seats, they're not very supportive. In fact, the base is as flat as a pancake. Speaking of flat, the centre console is completely flat, and this was the first 5 Series to do that because 5 Series of old always pointed the instruments towards the driver, which made it feel much more like a driver's car. The E60 was the first 5 Series to feature the controversial at the time iDrive system, which is controlled by this rotary knob here. I don't know why it got so much stick at the time because it's quite simple to use. I remember reading a Top Gear article at the time when I was a kid, I don't know, 13, 14-year-old. I remember them saying something like, iDrive, it should be called iDrive then iCrash because it's just so confusing. I haven't found that at all. Using the rotary dial, you can control the entertainment, the radio, the CD, the onboard information. It's all quite straightforward, really. Actually, saying that, one thing that is indefensible with the iDrive system is the fact that you can control the heater temperature from this. So, for example, I jumped in this yesterday, it was a nice warm day. I used these climate control dials here to set the air conditioning, and it wasn't blowing particularly cold. So I thought, oh well, it's an 18-year-old car, it probably doesn't work. But then I remembered, because I think my old 645 was the same, you have to go into the climate submenu of the iDrive system and select whether you want cooler air or warmer air from the centre vent. It is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Most people wouldn't know that that existed, so they just suffer it and end up with a map of Ireland under each armpit. One other little thing I don't like about this era of iDrive system is the screen, or specifically the colour of the display. It's all orangey and jaundiced. It looks tobacco stained like the television in a local working men's club. But I suppose at the time it was cutting edge. I mean, don't forget, when this car was launched, you could still smoke in pubs. So perhaps it appealed to some people, who knows. The quality of the interior is very good. I mean, bear in mind this car's done 184,000 miles and everything works, nothing's fallen off. The leather's high quality. One thing I don't like about the E60 is the position of the window switches. You have to be double jointed in the wrist to sort of operate them. It's a little bit odd. But everything works. Even the display hasn't gone all pixelated like some BMWs can of this era. The interior space was always very good on this 5 Series. It feels roomy and spacious. There's plenty of headroom, plenty of legroom, plenty of head and legroom in the back. The boot's a very good size at 520 litres. Annoyingly though, BMW made you pay extra if you wanted fold-in rear seats. So if you had large items and you wanted to fold down the rear seats to get more things in the boot, they made you pay extra for that. That's just typical of the Germans of that era. No money, no honey, as they say. Where the BMW really comes into its own though is the way it drives. It's way much better than most modern cars. And you really forget that this car's 18 years old. It has a 50-50 weight distribution, and of course it's rear-wheel drive, so it really feels like a chuckable driver's car. There's almost no body roll, it corners really flat. It's just good fun to drive. The 3-litre diesel engine produces about 218 horsepower, but it produces loads of torque, which means there's always power there to overtake. I know it's a bit of a cliche to say something pulls like a train, but this really does. It sounds like one too. The noise it makes when you floor it just makes you think that it's relentless. The power will always be there and never run out. It also rides very nicely. I mean, this model is an SE, so it won't be as hard as an M Sport, but it's nice and soft. Nowhere near as harsh as every single 1 Series or 3 Series I've ever driven, which are just annoyingly firm. The steering is also nice. It's not too heavy to manoeuvre around town, but it feels sharp and precise, even with nearly 200,000 miles on the clock. This has the 6-speed ZF automatic gearbox, which is the one I would go for. It does need to be serviced every 80 to 100,000 miles, just to prolong its life, but it does do a reasonable job. You could have also opted for a 6-speed manual gearbox. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a manual gearbox, in the right car, in the right conditions, on the right day. But most of the time, it isn't the right day, or the right conditions, and I'm in the wrong car. So, 9 times out of 10, I would just opt for an automatic. You spend half your life these days stuck in traffic, so why tire out your left leg when you don't need to? The 5 Series feels like it prefers an auto too. It's too big of a car to be rowing your way around town. There were lots of engines to choose from, starting with the 170 horsepower 520i, all the way up to the 367 horsepower 550i. It's got to be said the 530 diesel is the best all-rounder. Although, remember, it's not ULEZ compliant because of its age. So if you try and drive this thing into London, you will be made to feel about as welcome as Jimmy Savile. What else can I tell you? Depending on which engine you go for, you can have some engine trouble. Mainly issues surrounding the N47 4-cylinder petrol and diesel engines. The most common issue were dodgy timing chain tensioners. Now these would often get brittle with age and just snap without much notice, causing catastrophic engine damage. You could preempt this and replace them, but it will cost you a couple of grand. In addition to that, you can have issues with the swirl flaps where they go weak and break off and again cause catastrophic engine damage. Also, there can be issues with the turbo on the turbo diesel models, particularly with its wastegate. Also, the EGR valves and DPFs can cause you headaches. Now, that makes for pretty grim reading, but all cars have their bad points. It's a bit like the Porsche 996 with its IMS bearing. They don't all go, and that issue with the timing chain was most common for cars registered between 07 and 09. It was quite uncommon for cars around those 2 dates, but just something else to bear in mind. But the main reason you might want to avoid the N47 engine is because it's dull. The 6 cylinders and 8 cylinders are just infinitely better. The V8s are wonderful engines, but you can have issues with valve stem oil seals, bad timing chains, and oil leaks. I'm not painting a pretty picture for the V8s, am I? Well, the sad thing is, when they're working right, they're glorious. The old 4.4 litre engine in my 645, I just loved. It was fairly sensible on fuel when you wanted to drive sensibly. Sounded great. Sounded awesome when you started it up. And when you wanted to drive it like a hooligan, it went like a stabbed rat. But in all seriousness, you are better going for a 6-cylinder, so either a 3 litre petrol or a 3 litre diesel. They are by far the strongest and the most reliable. I mean, even the 3 litre petrol will return you 22, 23 miles per gallon around town and 32, 33 on a motorway run. The 3 litre diesel will get you an extra 4 or 5 miles per gallon. In 2008, the E60 went under the knife and had a minor facelift, but you'd have to be a complete anorak to be able to tell the difference. So, I'll tell you the difference. Firstly, gone was this gear lever. It was replaced with the shark fin style fly-by-wire lever rather than this mechanical one. In addition, there were very subtle differences to the front lights and the rear lights. And also the iDrive system was updated, but that was about it. Used prices here in the UK start at around £1,500. That's going to get you an early high mileage model. Now, if you want my opinion, I would go for an 06 or 07 done about 100,000 miles, because there's plenty more life left in that car. I would also personally opt for an M Sport because they just look better, the steering wheel's nicer, the seats are more supportive, and they hold the money better. So that's what I would do. Well, I think that's about it. So thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. If you've got any comments or questions, let me know, and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you fancy getting into the used car business and driving around in 184,000 mile 2003 5 Series on a glorious Sunday afternoon, then check out my online course. I've made nearly 100 videos which explain everything about the used car business, how to start, where to buy your stock from, how to get trade plates, insurance, all that sort of stuff. So I'll leave the link below so you can check that out for yourself. So cheers guys, I'll see you next time.